Welcome to World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss, the podcast for busy professionals, entrepreneurs, and business owners who want to travel smarter, save money, and plan unforgettable trips without the stress. I'm Ross, your host and the founder of Itinerary Boss. I spent a decade building a career in healthcare, software, and medical device sales while planning both personal and business trips across more than 20 countries. Whether it was group getaways with friends, couples trips, or just mapping out business territories, I became the go-to person for saving money on flights, organizing those logistics, and using points to elevate the experience. Now, as an entrepreneur and business owner, I help others do the same by showing you how to travel better using points, smart planning, and those proven strategies. Each week, we bring you expert guests, step-by-step tutorials on points and miles, and real-world itineraries that we've used to help you plan with confidence. Whether it's using points to travel better, exploring a new destination, or just learning how to maximize your spending, we've got you covered. Before we dive in, go ahead and grab one of our free tools in the show notes. One, the points and miles cheat sheet that'll help you get started earning and redeeming points to save thousands on travel, or the stress-free travel toolkit that includes a budget guide, packing checklist, and planning tips to save you time and hassle. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or busy professional looking to choose your next credit card or get help maximizing your everyday spending for rewards and booking free travel, book a free one-on-one consultation. You can find the link within the show notes or head over to itineraryboss.com. And if this episode helps you, please share it with a friend or family member, follow the show, and leave a 5-star review. It's the best way that helps us grow. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss. Today, I have an author and a just a world traveler. She's the author of The Joys of Jet Lag, Kat Medina on, and really excited to have her here today. How's it going today, Kat?
It's going great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And I know we got connected through a former host that I went on his podcast, and then he said we have to chat just based off, your background, our styles. So excited we got connected and really looking forward to diving in. But I don't want to sell you short. I know, you wrote that you sent me the book, which was awesome, and I'm excited to dive into it this summer. But would love just to learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so Kat Medina, I currently live in South Lake Tahoe, California. And I have two boys, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. So after extensively traveling, basically since I was 17 when I took my first solo trip, my type of travel has shifted a bit to be more family focused, which is a different style of adventure, but still pretty amazing. And I'm a writer currently working on a kid's book, so I switched genres temporarily. And I have a giant golden retriever named Donut who is sleeping right next to me. So if you hear heavy breathing, it is him and not me, just so you know.
I love the clarification. And I love the name too, Donut. That's great. We have a bulldog, and he does not get to sit in here because it sounds like a lawnmower is cutting grass, and he's so loud when he snores. So he has to stay down the hall.
That's probably a good call.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But no, that's very cool. What for your children's book, what's that all about?
It's kind of based in Tahoe area, and it is called Grumple the Great. It'll be out this summer about a black bear who wants to be the best in all the woods. And so, through a series of silly misadventures, he tries to be the best by being the greatest and learns that maybe it's better to be the kindest. And so there's lots of adult humor. Since I am in the stage of reading several children's books each night, many times the same book, hundreds of times. I wrote it just as much for the parents as for the kids. So hopefully it's a good one.
We're gonna have to plug that in the show notes. Once it's released, we'll go back and we'll put that in there because I get a bunch of friends who either have one kid, they're starting to have their second, or they're having their first, and I think they would love something that would bring them some humor too when they're reading those each night.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, what inspired you to start writing that?
After I'd kind of taking a pause from writing, when I had my kids, I was ready to create something that wasn't a human. And wanted to do something that was just lighthearted and fun and just enjoyable. And also, like, with the subtle message of kindness, I just feel like you can't go wrong. We need a bit more of that in today's world. And yeah, so it kind of called to me, and it's been a really fun process.
That's very cool. Well, I'm excited to hear how it goes and once you release it to share it. And I think it's, I mean, when you're going through and saying that's exactly why you start and that's what inspired you, I think it just transitions perfectly into, right, you also wrote a book around just how to use a traveler's mindset to not be an a-hole in real life. So, want to just kind of dive into like how did that all come about, right? Like what inspired you just to write that book, and then just everything travel versus just going down that, traditional career path.
Mhm. So for most of my life, I feel like I've been two different people. I've traveled to 40 countries and lived in Ecuador, Argentina, France, and Spain. And when I traveled, I felt like I was my best self and joy was effortless.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick break to say thank you so much for tuning into the show. The only way the show grows is through listeners like you helping us share it. So if you're enjoying the show, it'd mean the world to me if you hit that 5-star rating, shared it with a friend or family member who's ready to travel more, save money, or just needs a little bit more inspiration and that nudge. And if you're posting about it on Instagram, go ahead and tag Itinerary Boss, and we'll make sure to reshare it and shout you out for giving us a shout out. Thanks so much for the support. It truly means a lot. And now back with the show.
But when I returned home, it always felt elusive or forced even. And I would find myself trying to control the uncontrollable. I would get frustrated when things didn't go as planned. And maybe worse stuff, I stopped appreciating the little things like clean drinking water or a hot shower, even though I knew firsthand how uncommon both those things were in so many places that I'd been and in so many parts of the world. So I would just kind of go through the motions of planning the next trip, working, waiting until I could feel fully alive again. And then one day I realized that as much as I prioritized traveling, I shaped my career so that it was something I could do remotely, no matter where I was. Um, Even though I prioritized it and was able to travel a lot, I still spent most of my time at home in California and in this like worst self vibe. And it felt like such a waste of time to spend my days wishing I was somewhere else instead of enjoying where I was. So a couple of years ago, I made it my mission to bridge the gap between who I was when I traveled and who I was at home. And I realized that it all came down to mindset, a traveler's mindset. And by embodying a traveler's mindset in daily life, instead of just when I was abroad, I was able to feel that joy, that purpose that I craved, no matter where I was. So I decided to write about it, mostly in hopes of providing people with simple but impactful strategies that they could use in their life to experience more joy, adventure, and awe on the day-to-day instead of just when they're on vacation. Because most of us, if you're in the US, only get a few weeks of vacation each year. But we all know that feeling like when we get to our destination and it's like the stress and the worries just kind of melt away and we're more spontaneous and patient and we go with the flow and we find the humor more easily. And I think all of us could, benefit from bringing some of that back home into the daily life that we experience.
Yeah, that's awesome and very inspiring. I know when you were giving me that background when we first connected, my first thought was just reading the title was I've traveled a lot and sometimes you cross a lot of people who might be an a-hole when you're traveling. So I didn't know if that's what, you were getting after. Once we spoke, it was like that's very relatable. I feel like, for a lot of people and especially I mean, burnout is at an all-time high in the States, and like a lot of people don't, they just go on vacation to kind of escape that, and then they come back and they're just they aren't really enjoying those type of things. So I think it's really important to always just carry that mindset. So, you are thankful for those th little things, like you said, a hot shower, clean drinking water. And then just able to, right, always just carry that throughout your daily life. So it's cool. It's very cool that you did that. And then I know you kind of translated that into you lived in California your whole life, and then you actually moved to Lake Tahoe. So I think you said you were in Northern California, and then you moved and actually like you were like, you know what, we want to live in Lake Tahoe. We're just going to go ahead and do that.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a long time goal. So when I met my husband, we both went to Cal State Monterey, and we just always had the goal to end up here. But after graduating, and then it was during like 2009 when you had to take whatever you could get because of the recession and the limited jobs available. And then you get into routine of working and trying to grow within whatever company you're working at. And sometimes you get a little comfortable. And what led us to kind of pull the trigger and move forward with this long time dream, it wasn't really a goal because we weren't coming up with a plan to do it, was, at the time we were living in San Jose area. And a lot of our friends had started, having kids and going down that life path. And we had been trying for kids, but faced a couple years of infertility and finally got pregnant and then had a miscarriage. And that, like, it was really tough, but I see like a huge gift in it because I feel like if it would have worked out, we would have been comfortable having our built-in village with our friends living nearby in a similar stage of life. And this was kind of like this reality check of, hey, what's stopping you from taking this leap and doing this thing you've always talked about? Because technically, like I was already doing a job that I could do anywhere. And my husband, he had enough leverage at his job where, yeah, remote work was a possibility. And so it really made us question like, okay, like if we really wanted to do this and had to do this, could we do this? And we could. And so we kind of, as soon as we came to that realization, we just went for it. And I have zero regrets. It's been an amazing transition. And it's one of the first places that I've lived where I haven't had like this constant itch to move somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you were telling me that and I was like, yeah, Lake Tahoe's amazing. And the fact that you just took that leap and you looked at kind of the bigger picture of we're in this situation. I have the ability to work from anywhere. That's similar to me. And then also your husband had that leverage of just like, you know what, let's just go in and do it. And I think now with just, the ability to work remote, there's a lot of people that probably are in similar situations. And it is just sometimes just, if you do have that goal in mind, just taking that leap. And like you said, years later, you're like, we love it. We're here. We love to travel, but we don't feel like we need to plan that next trip to get away from this. We're happy where we're at.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like you can find a reason to do or not do anything. Like there's always an excuse or a reason, and you'll see other people do the thing that you said, "Oh, I can't do that. That's impossible. There's no way." But they make it a priority and they pull it off. And so it's like you just really have to dig deep and be like, am I the one that's impeding me from moving forward with my excuses? Or can I actually do this? And I remember years ago, I heard this question that Tim Ferriss asks of what would this look like if it was easy? And you
Mhm.
can realize how much stuff you personally, without realizing it, just subconsciously add on to make it harder to do. I think because it can be scary or there's lots of unknown and people get comfortable in their routines and stuff. And that was kind of like the reference of the assholes. In the book I call it asshole autopilot. It's just when you get stuck in routines and you stop seeing the world around you with fresh eyes because you get into this comfort zone.
Yeah. No, I think it's switching. I love that. And I think a lot sometimes people complicate it more and they say, I can't because, and they make the excuse. Instead, it's kind of shifting your mind to not thinking I can't. It's more like, okay, well, yeah, it's going to be hard, but how can I? And just framing it that way. And no, I completely agree with that quote from Tim Ferriss. And I think a lot of the times it is scary, but once you start to have different conversations, you're going to cross paths with a lot of like-minded people who are probably in the same situation as you, who you realize they're like, yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. And you brainstorm with those people. And I mean, and then you also get to learn just from different people with different unique experiences, different walks of life, and you build upon that. And I think that's the nice thing is once you do take sometimes those risks, like you're gonna learn, you're gonna realize just because someone's done it for a while, they're still trying to figure it out, and you may have a unique, valuable information or perspective that you can provide. So no, that's awesome.
I think that that's one of the differences, at least for me when I travel. Like a lot of my friends think I'm like this crazy risk taker because of some of the trips that I go on or going on them by myself, or bringing kids along. But it's kind of a calculated risk where I do my research and then I make my decisions. But when I get to the destination, I've done enough research so that I can provide myself opportunities to be spontaneous without fear or worry so much. And I think at home we don't really do that. We kind of get stuck in our ways and really like when we can step outside of that comfort zone and say yes to whatever ways life is asking us to show up, that's really when the magic happens. That's when things shift. You meet different people, like you're saying, that can completely change your perspective and open doors to areas you'd never even knew were available.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. And I think it's that we're very similar where people are like, how are you going? Like those are some kind of wild trips and you're just like, it just takes that preparation and things are going to happen. So if you make that preparation, like if something comes up, we can be spontaneous about it. And, once you start to travel a good amount, you know that things are going to come up and then you can go into that peace of mind. I'll give you a perfect example. We were on our honeymoon in Thailand in April and we were in Chiang Mai and it's freaking hot over there for anyone who ever, if you go there in March, the real feel is like 105. But we did a cooking class the first night, which it was outside, but it was at night, but it still was warm. We were exposed to some of the heat. We then did an elephant nature park the next day. And like we had planned more to do that afternoon and we were just too gassed from travel and being outside. And then we thought it was a good idea the next morning to do a Muay Thai class. Well, everything in Thailand is usually going to be outside. So it wasn't sunny inside the gym, but it still was outside at 8 in the morning. So we did that. And then we decided, oh, well, there's a sauna, steam room, cold plunge next to it. We might as well just go have a wellness day. And you can say that the wellness day went wrong. And afterwards, we were hydrating, drinking a lot of coconut water, but we both got some heat exhaustion and had to go to the Chiang Mai hospital and get some IVs. We luckily we were in and out in about 2.5 hours. It cost us like 175 US dollars because it was pretty cheap in Thailand. The healthcare system was great. They took great care of us, but why I'm saying this is that Thursday night, we had a flight that was scheduled to go from Chiang Mai to Phuket that we could not go on. We were staying in Phuket on the actual island, like the area for 2 nights, and we are taking a boat to stay in Phi Phi for 2 nights. We were going to take the ferry the next day, the next morning. That's why we're flying out that night to get up early, take the ferry, have full days in Phi Phi. We just said, you know what? We aren't feeling well. Let's cancel the flight. We'll rebook it. Worst case, we'll find a hotel, in Phuket. We're already there for 4 days. Like we'll just get there when we feel well. And luckily, we were able to find a hotel that was similar, 50% off day of, amazing resort, right? And since we had planned and strategically knew it, just that minor hiccup turned into silver lining where we ended up saving a couple $100 and got this amazing like villa that then we got upgraded the day of because we were on honeymoon. So like it ended up turning out great, but that's only because we had done the front end planning to know like, well, if we miss our ferry, we don't want to spend 7 hours traveling when we have heat exhaustion. And if we miss our ferry, it's all good. Like, it's $30 down the drain each. So it's not a big deal. But that's just a perfect example of like sometimes things can go wrong, but if you plan and you know those type of things and the people at the resort are they're gonna care that like you ended up going to the hospital, keep that and send it. Like we got refunded. So it ended up working out. But it's like those strategic plans and like kind of knowing those things helped us out for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, and you got a pretty good story out of it too.
Yeah, lessons learned. I have the picture of us sitting in with the IVs. And what was funny is I worked for Philips for 6 years. So of course there's like a patient monitor that says Philips. So I was like, I gotta send this to all my old coworkers.
Yeah. You know what, I think like that's one of the big differences that I noticed when I like kind of went about to dig deep and figure out what qualities were different that I embodied when I was abroad versus at home. And like what I kind of called that one is just like participating in the moment. Like it's like adapting and applying a resilience and using an attitude of adventure when plans change. And that's a guarantee when you're traveling. Like it will happen and expect it and accept it instead of resisting it. And it was something that at home, when plans changed or like an inevitable work fire popped up or something like that, which also are to be expected. Like that's just life. I completely resist it, get super frustrated, let things totally throw off my day. And that was a really big shift for me is being like, okay, if it happened, then maybe like just like let's reframe this. Maybe it was meant to happen, and now I'm meant to step up with this new attitude where I can either apply humor or if not yet, do it later when it doesn't sting as much, but use it as a moment to kind of rise to my full potential and treat it like an adventure on travels, because that's what we call it when things don't go as planned on travels, they're adventures.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think when I first started traveling, it was we have an itinerary and we're sticking to it. I was getting together 6 guys, so we had to keep together an itinerary. But as you get older, it's like just being more spontaneous. And the more you travel, I think that's where a lot of people who focus in on that 1, 2 week vacation, they get home and there's no time to reflect. It's just, oh, we went and did this, we had our vacation, we're back at work, and you don't kind of learn those things. And if you have that traveler's mindset over time, you're constantly gonna see those things, and it's going to help when you do get home. And just having that humor. I think something while you were talking, it just popped into my head is just if anyone watches Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, like anything pops up, he finds himself in situations all the time. Obviously, he writes the show, but it's like he just laughs about it. And you're always going to have those Larry David moments of things pop up, and you just got to make the most of it and think back and laugh and be like, I was in this really weird or random situation, and or this happened, and I just got to roll with the punches.
And that's like, wait, if you think about it, when people come back from trips, a lot of times those are the stories that they tell their friends. Like, oh my gosh, like luggage got lost and then we got swindled by this cab driver. But they say it like with like humor. It's like a funny story. And then at home, if something bad happens, then it just is like complaining. It's for some reason there's a gap, you know? I don't know why, but it's something that I feel like if you focus on it, you can actually start to shift it and change and reframe how these experiences affect us.
Yeah, no, very, very well said. What do you feel like? I mean, do you feel like there's just misconceptions? Because you talked about some of your friends thinking like you take these calculated risks, or you go on these very wild trips. Do you feel like there's just any misconceptions that some people think about that you wish were a little bit less misunderstood?
I think that a lot of people think, it's uh, the only way to travel is by spending a ton of money. And it is more than possible to do budget trips and um, just kind of shape your life to do the sort of travel that you want. When I several years ago, I moved to South America for 6 months, and I honestly saved money by doing that. I at the time, since I was going solo, like my flight there was horrendous. I think I had like 4 stopovers and it was like almost 2 days of travel because I was really trying to stretch my dollar. And then once I got there, since the destination and the town that I was staying at was not super touristy, renting a room was like $200 a month. And compared to living in California, I was able to save a lot of money. And then as a result, do a lot of experiences since like the basic lifestyle costs were less. Um, that's the main one, I think. A lot of people too, I grappled back and forth. Oh, should I have kids or not? Because having kids would mean like lifestyle change. I wouldn't be able to do these sort of trips and do the things that really bring me a lot of joy. And I noticed that most of the people who had words about that, of like, oh, get it out of your system now, because once you have kids, you won't be able to do that. Um, I realized that those people didn't travel before kids, and they they sure as heck don't travel after. And it's like you got to pay attention. Like, oh gosh, what's the phrase of like, don't take advice or don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from or something like that. And it's like if they're not having that same lifestyle that's like travel focused, why would I listen to them about that? There's plenty of people who are doing it. And then I saw this quote that was like, having kids isn't a reason to stop traveling, it's a reason to travel. And I know a lot of people think like, not a ton of people, but some people do still say it like, why would you bring kids so young? It's just expensive and they won't remember it. And like two things, I'm the one who's remembering it. And the other thing is, even if they don't remember the specifics or a lot of it, there's no denying that travel shapes people. It exposes them to different ways of life, to resilience and adaptability and spontaneity, and seeing how other people live and learning, whether or not you're aware of it, just by observing subconsciously and consciously, that there's more than one right way to live a life. And to be exposed to that at an age that's so young, regardless of whether or not they can remember, I think it will shape their personality in a positive way.
I couldn't agree more. If you're watching, I'm nodding my head the entire time because I just not only do I agree, but I feel like you are saying repeating exactly what a former guest I recorded an episode with last week said around the same exact topic around traveling with kids and common things that people will say. They're not going to remember it and the perspective that they gain. So that's why I'm laughing and nodding my head because I feel like you said the exact same
Oh,
thing
how funny.
Dave did. I know it was great, but it's true. But I think you bring up a great point. It is funny as you get older and you start to realize a lot of those things. It's those people are just making excuses, right? They're thinking of the I can't because, and they're not thinking how can I, and they're the ones who didn't travel or they did a little bit. It's similar to I always laugh when people are like, "Well, good luck going to work out when you have kids," and it's like, well, I mean, if you make that a priority and you kind of figure that out, with your significant other, that's important because you're focused on your health. And sure, when you have a newborn, it may be a little bit tougher, but you got to make that a priority. And I think it's the same type of, I hear those two things and I'm just like, well, those are two very important things. But a lot of times it's the people who didn't travel before or the people who aren't exercising before.
And babies can make for a great kettlebell swap. A little
Exactly.
harder because they're floppier. So,
That's funny. That's too funny. What do you have any best practices? When you're traveling a good amount, right? So for people who are wanting to travel more, just to make it more enjoyable and less stressful.
um, so for the person that hasn't traveled much, but they've always wanted to, don't get caught up in the checklist, like logistical stuff that can feel a bit overwhelming, and focus on all of the benefits that it will provide you, the things that you want to see. Get really invested in the idea of it. And then all of those have to things won't seem so daunting. There are so many resources nowadays, like travel blogs and forums and all sorts of things that, when I was first starting out, it wasn't like that at all. I feel like it's easier than ever to travel. But because of all the information, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. And so just to figure out your why and get really clear on the sites you want to see, the things you want to experience, and then it's all just part of it. And once you get there, it's really rewarding having put in the work to plan the trip and then have it come to fruition. And for just all travelers, I would say I'm a bit biased on this piece of advice. I've been asked like, what's one one thing you always pack or something, your go-to piece of advice for it. And mine was gifted to me. It was a travel journal on my that first solo trip. It was like 2 days before I was going to leave. I had not packed one. It was not even on my mind. I didn't really keep a journal or anything before then, but my best friend at the time gave me one. And now anytime I go on a trip, I bring a journal and I write in it every day. That is like no excuses. Even if it's like super exhausted, I get it down. And now I have like this fat stack of journals of all these experiences. And they're some of my most prized possessions. And I get, as detailed as like, what I did, but also like the price of things. And it's fascinating, like to see, 20 years ago that I spent like $2 for a like lunch set menu that included like a drink, a starter, the main, a soup, and dessert at this location that now has since blown up and become super touristy, and it's like $20. So it's something that I reference, and it's also really cool because I try to really just share any observations of how things are different. And I think knowing that I have that accountability to write at the end of the day or early in the morning for the previous day, it makes me kind of hyper observant to everything going on around me and really just noticing it, which is like keeps you present. And I think that presence is the key to joy, awe, and wonder.
No, I perfectly said. My mom got me a travel journal for Christmas, which I loved. So I have one right back there on my bookshelf, which you can't see because of my background. But there's one, and I mean, yeah, it's just like taking a step back, looking back through that, because yeah, like you said, you'll look back and be like, wow, that was two, three, $4, and now it's way more expensive. But one thing that I really like that you also said is just around the checklist, because when I first started planning trips, like, I was planning it for groups, so I had to keep people as organized as possible. But you start to realize, like, if you try to pack everything into everything, like you said, if you miss something, something goes wrong, it makes it a little bit harder. So it's just focusing on, writing down, like, what do you like? What destinations may you want to go to? And if cost, you brought up a good point that I wanted to touch on a little bit more. If cost is kind of a barrier, um, I think that's a misconception. Everyone thinks travel is super expensive. And yes, from, flights and things like that, it is costly right now. But if you, like you said, there's a lot of resources out. If you're listening to this podcast, this is one of them. There's different blogs. There's different ways that you can strategically maximize your budget, whether that's through cash. I had a former guest come on, uh, Chris Klesch, who he talked about Red Week. It's a timeshare website that there's people who own timeshares who are very, they're just tired. They're like tired landlords, and the maintenance costs have gone up, and timeshares aren't as popular now with Airbnb, hotels, everything. And they're willing to rent it to you for 80, 90% cheaper just so they can pay those maintenance costs and keep those. So, and he goes out and he skis in Vail every year, and you can find two, three bedrooms for 90% off, and you can find some amazing places. So that's one resource if you're paying cash. We're all about points and miles and how do you use your credit card spend if you're a business owner, right? If you're already spending money on your credit card for your business, like those should be transferred into, right, points that you then can use for flights, hotels, things like that. So combining that with your business spend for points, but then also you have personal needs and spend, like understanding how to use points and miles to travel, whether that's flights, whether that's hotels, and they don't have to be super expensive, right? You can find places. I'm staying at a couple Hyatts, using, points from Ultimate Rewards points that I'm transferring over, and they're like 3,500, 4,000 points a night. And that's not a lot. So figuring out how to do that, and we have a free points and miles cheat sheet that we offer because we understand that can get very complicated, and the credit card companies and the banks don't want it to be easy, but once you've done it and you kind of learn it, I've been in that game for 10 years and like have made all the mistakes, right? And can really help there. So I think there's a lot of different strategies, and depending on what you want to do, like there's so many resources out there, and that's why I like bringing experts like yourself on because you can share those lessons learned, with listeners.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, I want to just hear a little bit more about, you wrote your book. Just how do you feel like just since you wrote your first book, now that you're writing your second, like is there anything that's had an impact on you just for now when you're traveling or just in your daily life that you've learned from it?
Um, what I've been trying to do lately is just sometimes when I like set a goal and move forward, I kind of white knuckle it and force things through. And generally I can achieve it, but it may not be the most enjoyable experience. It's just kind of like pure grit, get through it, get it done, do whatever it takes, no excuses. And I think that I'm learning how to create some space for grace and to like kind of surrender to the process. And I think that what I've noticed is when I allow that space for like life to come in and maybe slightly change the direction or trajectory instead of having my plan and just following the steps and getting there. Um, Sometimes it can take me to an even better spot than I had intended and may not have imagined. And it makes the process more enjoyable. It's kind of like when you try to force things, it's kind of like you're taking this bumpy dirt road to your destination. But if you allow a little bit of space for life to step in, for you to have like these random, spontaneous, open-hearted conversations with strangers or whoever seems to just plop into your life and you take the time to like talk to them and see, you might find that it almost like it places you on this like well-paved freeway to get to your destination and it's much easier and more enjoyable and it doesn't have to be so hard all the time. It's tough to change that habit because I've seen a lot of benefits from that mindset and getting to where I want to go. But in other times I've seen when I do the opposite, it's it's created all these amazing relationships that I couldn't have predicted. And I don't know, sometimes I think it's important to pause when you're too, like when you're really in deep in the process and it becomes all stress and responsibility and try to see how you can integrate some more fun and joy and adventure into it. Because it's the cliche of like enjoying the journey. It's not just applicable to travel and destinations. Like I want to know that I'm going through my life, whether it's writing a book or working or parenting or anything, that I can look back on it without regret because I know that I'm living in alignment with my values, being who I want to be, living with integrity, and also just having like fun, enjoying it instead of just waiting until I get to that destination to celebrate and enjoying and celebrating the momentum throughout.
I love that. I mean, you brought up a couple really good points. A lot of the time, a lot of people that I listen to are, it's like the best part is like whether they build a company, whether they then go on to do something else. It's like once they finish doing that, and sometimes they're like, I wish I enjoyed more of the process and the journey during, because once I got to whether it's I sold my company, I got to where I wanted to go, whatever that may be, they were like, I realized I was more happy when I was doing the thing and building that and just having the fun conversations, whether it maybe I had a smaller following, whatever that was, because I could just have fun with it. I didn't have much of this pressure and it wasn't, I didn't go into a business or go into doing something, to not be happy and do it right. I did it because it was something I wanted to do. So just enjoying those things. Yeah, I agree. I think something that I like that you said that I've implemented over the past 6 months to a year is just like breaking down a full day where it's no meetings, no notifications, and it's just a full strategy day where it's like I'm reflecting on what went well last month. How are we aligning with the goals that we set? What are we having fun with? What didn't work? And like just looking at the progress and being like, okay, it isn't just another checklist. Like, yeah, this is what we have in mind for next quarter or next month, but also like this is fun. Like we've had all these meetings, we've met with all these people, like looking back and being like, wow, I talked to this person that connected this, and then this happened, and just like enjoying that randomness. You're like, I never would have thought that would have happened like 6 months ago, but somehow here we are. And it's just like putting those, focusing on those things. And I mean, just like you said, giving yourself fun. I try to do pickleball once a week, like trying to do golf more. I mean, obviously when we were planning a wedding, it was tougher to, find it was what is next to do. But now that we have more free time, it's like spending the time with people that you want to have fun with. And even if it's not doing that, if it's just, hey, I can't do that at this time, let's get coffee and just catch up. Like those little things, because at the end of the day, those are going to be the most fun and those are probably going to help you out the most from a business perspective and just everything.
Yeah, I feel like to-do lists are endless. They're always going to be there. There's always going to be more stuff to do that you have to do to get done. And I have always been the kind of person I hate procrastinating. And so I used to always be like, I can't do this fun thing until I get all of my have-tos done. And over the last couple of years, I've started to kind of shift that because it's endless, and then you don't have any time for it. And what I've noticed is that by doing the want tos sometimes before the have tos, it gives me the fuel and the energy that I need to do the have tos and do it in a better attitude.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly said. There's a Michael Hyatt has a my wife and I got these at the beginning of the year. It's called a full focus journal, and it just like focuses on because you can I can hammer out to-do list, right? I'm the same way, but it's like, what are your top three things that matter that you want to accomplish today? It could be personal, it could be that, and that's really the must-dos, and then that's it. And just accomplish because those three tasks will then make you realize those, 10 other things, whatever, however many, like a lot of the times, if you don't focus on those, you'll probably get more out of doing those other things versus just adding a whole checklist. So those have been, and it's a wellness journal. So you write out like, how was I feeling? What did I like from yesterday? How did I sleep? How am I hydrating? Like all those things, like what was my best thing yesterday? What's my best thing today? Like, what am I think? So like all those things, and then it helps you, think kind of bigger picture, even if you're in a little bit of a funk.
Mhm. I'm gonna add a couple things to that. I completely agree. And I feel like besides just focusing on the what are the top three things to do or what are my main focuses, is to like bigger picture with the goal or the project or whatever you're working on is who do I want to be at the end and throughout? Not just at the end, like, but throughout. Do I want to be like this stress case who's snapping at everyone because I'm so focused on this and on the edge of burnout? Or do I want to, get clear on what my values are, how I want to live my life and apply that to any situation? And then the other thing is on like more of a micro scale, um, to yeah, have your day figured out. What's my main focus going to be? But also, how do I want to feel at the end of this? Like usually when I ask myself that, I want to feel proud of who I was. I want to feel like tired in a good way and that I showed up authentically, vulnerably, imperfectly, and connected with people.
Yeah, no, I love that you added that because I think that's very important, and especially nowadays, just, showing up like that online, especially when you're teaching people or just sharing your lessons learned, like everything is always the best on social media or online. And it's like if you can share like, no, it's hard. Like it's like, I struggled here, similar to what we were talking about earlier. It's if you can share that, people are going to trust you and respect more and they'll be like, oh, okay, like I'm not the only person struggling with it. And everything isn't, what to believe it is online.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, Kat, this has been great. Just from your book, what can people expect, right? If they go ahead and get The Joys of Jet Lag, is there anything that you haven't talked about that you share within the book?
So there's several different qualities that kind of I've noted to make up a traveler's mindset. And so I share travel stories and to really drive home the different qualities. And at the end of each chapter, I have what I call a jet lag toolkit that summarizes the key bullet points of how you can apply it, today. And so you can read straight through or pick and choose chapters, or if you really don't have the time, you just do the toolkit and you're all set. So I try to make it as digestible and entertaining as possible. The other thing is maybe you figured it out from the subtitle of how to not be an a-hole in daily life, but there's some spicy language, but I feel like it adds to it instead of takes away from it.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, this has been great. And listeners, if you want to get the book, we'll link those in the show notes. You also can find Kat on Instagram, which we'll link in the show notes, as well as we'll link her website. That way, it's easy for you just to go check those out and find her. But again, really appreciate you coming on, Kat. This has been great. And for listeners, if you're new here, make sure you give us a follow. That way, you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Please share it with a family or friend if you think this would help them out. That's the way we grow the show and reach more listeners to help them travel more. And also, if you want to give it a 5-star review, if you think Kat did a great job and I did a great job, feel free to do that. That also helps us reach more people who are trying to travel. And we will be seeing you next week. Thanks again for tuning in.